Hi, everybody.
So, Michael, we couldn't be more thrilled.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting. It's the first ever subscription summit.
Yes, yes. And have you ever been to Michigan or Detroit before?
No, it's my first time and loving it already. Had a nice meal out in Greektown last night and checked out the city. It's great to be here.
Okay, good. Well, you never know where you might be back. So I'm going to just dive in. I know we have a lot of questions, and what I want to also give everybody the heads up is we're going to kind of take a break a couple times in our discussion today to make sure that we answer questions you guys have. So you don't have to wait till the end. Start capturing and thinking about those questions so we can go ahead and feed them in with Michael here, because this is what this is about. This is a fireside chat, less the fire. Darn all, we could have used it today, right?
Where's the fire?
Where is the fire? But this is really about having a chat with all of us in the room. So again, please feel free to ask questions. Okay, so Michael, what I wanted to start out with is, according to Shay Simmons with Bustle, if you are a subscription box junkie, you've probably heard of the miracle that is FabFitFun.
Right.
Yeah, so Michael, how about sharing with us the miracle of the FabFitFun story?
Sure. Well, to get everyone on the same page, like we send out a box every season. It goes out 4 times a year, and it's full-size products across every category. So beauty, fashion, fitness, wellness, home, tech, and we say it's everything a woman needs to feel great from the inside out. And the story actually, and I should point out my brother and my co-CEOs in the audience too, co-founders. So we actually built FabFitFun initially out of a digital agency where we were doing sort of media strategy and web development for different types of entertainment figures. And we built FabFitFun initially as just an editorial brand. So we were writing content in these categories, developing a voice in these categories. We had actually spent some time working with building we actually built a property called the Zoe Report with Rachel Zoe. I think Nicole's out in the audience over here. She runs the Rachel Zoe box, which is doing great too. And then we modeled FabFitFun initially modeled after that, where we had a sort of celebrity spokesperson. We were going to produce content. And a few years into it, we thought we didn't want to just be a media business. We wanted to actually do something really unique and different in the world. So that's when we launched the boxes in spring of 2013. And since then, that was a real turning point. We've been growing pretty fast and excited about it.
Well, I love that you are all about helping women become happy from the inside out.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that have surprised you that make women happy from the inside out?
Well, so we've really honed in on this idea of sort of novelty and personal growth as a path to happiness. Okay. If you actually study happiness, and we've actually tried to understand it really well, there's just a few things that are pretty proven to lead to happier lives.
Take notes, everybody. Yeah. This is good. Men, particularly, take notes.
3 things. It's actually universal. It's not just women. It's men and women. It's one is the quality of your relationships, making sure you have people you trust in your life and that trust you and that you enjoy spending time with. 2 is having a sense of meaning or purpose, whatever you're spending your time doing. And 3 is actually just novelty, like having new things in your life, growing, feeling like you're expanding your sort of your horizons and getting out of your comfort zone. And so, when that 3rd pillar is what we stand for. We want to put that piece of your sort of happiness pyramid on autopilot, where it's very easy to forget about yourself. We're all very busy. We're all doing 100 things, and we don't always have time to go out and find that cool thing that makes our life, just brightens our day and introduces us to something new or unexpected. And that's really what I think the role that the FabFitFun box plays in our customers' lives. It's in a lot of ways also. I actually use the analogy of New Year's. There's 2 times a year I think where everyone sort of takes a moment to step back and become reflective. One is your birthday, the other is New Year's, when you're sort of making resolutions. And we actually that happens both of those things happen at once for me. So it really magnifies sort of New Year's baby. And we try to recreate that experience 4 times a year, where with the changing of the seasons, we're introducing you to new things, and I think it's sort of like that stamp for our customer, like summer is here, fall is here. I mean, the fall boxes started shipping last week, so it really, it's that whole sense of a journey and your own personal growth and getting something unexpected, I think, is what really makes people excited.
That's really helpful. I'll just add another interesting thing about fall is in the Wall Street Journal I think actually last Thursday, they actually talked that now September is almost replacing or becoming even more relevant to kind of that rebirth as January is, because they said they had a huge article on it. It's really quite fascinating about how people, it's kind of that back to everything, right?
Yeah.
Back to school, back to work, back to, not having my kind of summer lifestyle, doing a little crazier things. So that kind of, I think, even re-adds your whole seasonality component.
Well, if you actually look at like world cultures,
Yeah.
right? There's, I'm Jewish. Jewish New Year's is actually usually in September, right?
Yeah.
It's with the harvest, and actually, there's a lot of New Year's that are actually in spring too, like also Persian New Year's in the spring. So actually, we actually have, if you look, changing of seasons are really, signify that sort of idea of like renewal, rebirth, taking stock of things. So we think that sort of cadence and tied to that element of sort of surprise and unexpected things, and also like a sense of balance too, right? Like what is it? We try to have every box be balanced between the different categories, because there's usually some aspect of yourself that you probably haven't been nurturing, and by sort of hitting all those spots where it's, you're sort of like beauty and fashion, fitness and wellness and something for the home, and then you sort of get a reset, right? Like it reminds you to think about all those things.
Well, just on a micro scale, when you think about some of your boxes, because again, you guys are probably almost as excited to see people get them as they are to receive them. And I was really fascinated by all the people who create these videos of the opening of the box, right? It's pretty cool. But what is something that you think is particularly maybe hit it out of the park in terms of an item that really gave people that joy?
Yeah. And
then conversely, which is one that you said, gosh, I thought this would make people fall in love? Because we'd love to hear also it didn't work for one. So. Sure.
The first one's easier to answer. I mean, we actually do very detailed product surveys after every box. So we know actually exactly. We have like a rank order of what's the best product to the worst product, in our history. We actually know what it is.
Wow.
But I'm not going to talk about one that we know the ratings on. I'm actually just going to talk about one that I'm really enthusiastic about right now because it's in our fall box. Actually, there's a few that I think we've hit. We're having an amazing run right now. We launched our fall box about 10 days ago, and it's really been probably the most well-received box that we've ever done. I think a few of the standout items. I was talking to Liz from My Subscription Addiction, who I'm always like, she's our sort of oracle. If she gives us a good review, then we finally made it. And then the comment section. So we've got a good review this time. But I think we did a partnership with ModCloth, which is a great brand. I think there's a lot of alignment with it. We did these blanket scarves. I think people are really loving those. They're just really soft, great quality, really feels like fall. I think that's a winner. I think we've started doing a lot of product development. So we've made a lot of our own products in the fall box. The one that I think is just really capturing a lot of, it encapsulates a lot of what FabFitFun is. We actually made coloring books. So we actually did our own branded FabFitFun coloring books. What's amazing about them is a few things. One, we actually went out to the creative community that we work with and had Instagram illustrators create the pages. So each page, we crowdsourced it. Each illustrator has their own sort of thing and their theme. There's two versions. There's a nature coloring book and a things coloring book. The second thing I love about it is we try to feature a nonprofit every season. And so our fall nonprofit is Pencils of Promise. And they're an education nonprofit doing all sorts of education initiatives around the world. And so the colored pencils that go with the coloring book are branded with Pencils of Promise. And then the last thing, we sort of rolled the dice on this. We weren't sure it was going to work, but we actually made the entire box something you could color in. So it's actually like a white, black and white box. And usually we have very colorful boxes. We thought this might not work. It's not going to photo well. It's not going to. It's going to get dirty when you ship it out. But we have great shippers, APC and FedEx here. So thank you guys for getting those boxes out in the right way. But now we're seeing just the results of that. Like we made something interactive and everyone's coloring it in, and hashtagging pencils of promise and the whole thing. So I think those are probably two standout items in the fall box. In terms of like a dud, what I'd say is, I'm gonna be careful here, but
recorded.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think this is okay to say. It wasn't a dud. It was just it was new for us. But we have this idea of sponsored products, and what that is sort of like it's like a commercial break, right? Like in your box, right? It's like we think of like each product as a story, and like the sponsored products are like a commercial, and it's a no-brainer in terms of the benefit to the audience, right? Which is they're actually getting part of the box subsidized, so we can actually end up putting even more stuff in the box. And the first ever sponsored product, or one of the first ones that we did was Always Panty Liners, and I think it was just unexpected. I think, and we hadn't yet sort of fully educated the customer on what a sponsored product was, and I think there was some sort of a little bit of like I paid what for what, and so we've taken it upon ourselves to really, it's not just sending a box, but it's also like educating your community about like how it works and why things are picked and setting the right context. So we've done a really good job. We've developed a magazine that explains all the products. We've always identified the sponsored products, but calling it out in even more specific ways, and so I think we've made a lot of progress since then.
Okay, so you are a brave man in many ways, because you actually said that out loud.
Yeah.
Okay, and Always, for what it's worth, is a great brand, but
I even know what panty liners are.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But it's interesting because I think so much of it also depends on the channel, right? So it's just the reason you don't see that kind of an ad on Super Bowl or football is because it doesn't kind of fit with that channel. It doesn't take anything away from the brand or who uses things. But when you said that, really you guys are about kind of that novelty and discovery and everything, it's probably helped shape when you think about for our channel, what are the best sponsored products? So that's kind of, it's just great products, but different channels.
Well, so like we've explored other like feminine hygiene types of products, both sponsored and non-sponsored. I actually think it's within our sweet spot in terms of like, and we have 2 sponsored products now in our fall box, and the response is amazing, right? Like, so I think it's a totally appropriate, and I'll do call out to our amazing sponsors of our fall box. We have Secret deodorant, and we have Cottonelle, which is their fresh wipes, and they're actually like people are really happy
because
they're
they're
great.
novel. Yeah, but they're novel. Back to the fact is to me, it's about the novelty more so probably than the product.
Well, it's a great product. It's something someone hasn't tried. Right. There's an angle. We're telling the story about how to use it. There's a lot there, and we feel really good about the way we work with sponsors now. I think it really allows us to put even more into the box.
Okay, so that's a great setup for my next question, and I haven't met Liz, but I certainly have heard of the Oracle, as you call her, Liz Catamon. There she is, and I know you're up next later today. So Liz, with My Subscription Addiction, has this to say about your fall 2016 box, and I'm sure you've read it, but in case everybody else hasn't. This box is a value of $241, exclamation points. And that's not even counting the bonus sponsored items. This is one of those boxes that always has me asking, how do they do it? So I'm going to ask you, how do you do it?
I'll say a few things on that. Mm-hmm. I actually give a lot of credit to Daniel, my brother, who's sort of like set the bar in terms of our sales and merchandising culture, which is our vendors are our partners, but we have to work really, really, really hard to get the right terms and the right sort of economic relationship that's going to work for them, but also is going to deliver a ton of value to our customers. And you don't do that by sort of just like walking in and saying like, well, like, how much? What's the price? It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of selling and explaining like what's the value prop and why they're going to get so much out of it. And I think that's been a big of it. We have a culture where we go deep with each partner. And I think the second thing is focus. We only ship 4 boxes a year. There's 8 to 10 products in each box. So we have 32 to 40 products per year, slots to fill. And we have, at this point, over 10-person merchandising team focused on 40 slots per year. So we have, and I was talking to John at the Gentleman's Box this morning. I said, anytime you're doing something at internet scale, and internet scale is when you're online and you're doing something, you have to be the best in the world at it, right? Like that's automatically the assumption because the next option is a click away. Yeah. And so we've been very, very focused, and we've limited the scope. Like all sorts of questions about, oh well, will you launch? Why don't you go monthly, or why don't you do additional verticals, or why don't you, and we're still, we're like, well, there's so much more to do to make this experience perfect. And so if you put a lot of man and woman hours, our team is actually like 80% women, so people hours behind a small set of tasks, then you really have to figure out how can I do those tasks in a world-class way. And for us, merchandising the box that's the business, right? That's the core of the business, and it hits home every time we launch a box, and we see just how much of a difference it makes when it's really, really, really good. Yeah. Everything works better, and our lives are better, and we're much happier. So that focus is really important for us.
Okay, and your approach to partnerships, that this is about a win-win.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think our vendors even win, are still winning more than they win a lot. And the reason they win a lot, I mean, it's just like, I think our first speaker was talking about banner blindness today, right? And even beyond that, there's sort of like digital blindness. You're just inundated with content. And I think what's interesting about not just us, but all this amazing subscription services out here is you cut through the digital noise, right, with physical attention. And so, a lot of times I've described what we're doing is we're a media platform. We're actually like a magazine, but our stories are these products. And so for any of the vendors, it's just we have like a real supernova of attention that we create every time we launch this box. There's just incredible amounts of UGC that go out, customers doing their unboxings, our influencer programs that ride on top of that, and all those brands get to participate in that, and they get a lot out of it. Pretty much every partner we've ever worked with has wanted to do it again. And so I think that's the biggest sign to us that there's a lot of value.
It's really interesting. A lot of people will talk about, member loyalty, but really thinking about partner loyalty, that's such a refreshing long-term way to look at business, period. So
yeah,
what about you guys?
Well, I don't know if the echoes, have I been speaking wrong? I don't know if it's changing. But,
doing good.
We actually track a customer NPS score. And for those familiar with Net Promoter Scores, sort of you ask the question, how likely are you to recommend this product or service to your colleague? They rate it 0 to 10, and you get a score basically out of that. We do a customer Net Promoter Score, but we also have a vendor Net Promoter Score. So we survey our vendors after every box and ask them, how likely are you recommend this to other potential partners?
Okay, I'm going to give everybody a heads up. I'm going to ask another question, but right after that, I'm going to open it up to the audience for a little. So if you have a question, be thinking about and ready to raise your hand, and I know we have microphones in the room as well. I think we could probably talk hours about kind of the front office, the front end of the business, which is the whole end part of, developing the boxes, getting them to the customers, the whole social media influencer strategy. But I want to spend a few minutes on the back office stuff because it's not that glamorous. And it's interesting, I was talking with Shadi with Great Lakes, and I had asked him, and obviously they're a logistics company, one of the vendors here today, and I'd asked him what one piece of advice he might give everybody when they're doing a subscription box startup. And he said, well, really thinking about organization and really starting at the beginning, because again, I think in a lot of businesses, we think the money's all made at the end. In real estate, the truth is that you actually make your money on what you buy the property for, almost more than what you sell it for. So thinking about starting with the beginning and thinking about how you structure that business. I know you gave a lot of credit to your brother Daniel we're really thinking through those partnerships. So I think, again, thinking about the other parts of the back office, whether it's your operations, managing the books. I'd love to hear some of the things that you've kind of learned that maybe changed how you ran the business from the beginning to what now in terms of the back office.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things there. I think one thing that's probably underrated, surprisingly, and I don't know, like at least from a sort of from an investor perspective and from a media perspective, probably not from an entrepreneur, not from an experienced entrepreneur's perspective, is just cash flow. You know, like I think, you know, you can have a P&L and you know how you recognize revenue and whether you're profitable or not, and then your cash flow dynamics can be completely different. And that could be the difference between a great business and a horrible business. And actually, like if you actually plot out the biggest retailers in the world, you know, and the multiples they trade out in public markets. You look at Amazon, Walmart, and Target, and how big they've grown and what, like, how successful they are. The like single biggest difference between any of these companies is just their cash conversion cycle, like how much sort of they pull cash forward in their business. And I think it's you know, it's easy to sort of be cavalier about it. Sort of, you know, it's like, oh well, I pay net 30 or net 60 or whatever, you know, how much of a difference it can make. It actually makes a world of difference. And actually,
right.
One of the reasons we've been able to be very capital efficient is we've paid a lot of attention to that sort of detail.
Now, who in your company does? Is it you?
No, Danny does everything. So.
Oh my gosh! You know what, Michael? Okay, Danny, you're gonna back up there.
No,
but having trusted people.
Well,
that,
yeah,
that have skills.
So we have an unbelievable team. I mean, and on the cash flow piece, actually, Danny did focus on it very early on in a lot of ways, and you know, more recently we have an unbelievable head of finance, Zaina. She heads up our finance and ops. She works with a lot of the vendors here, actually. And you know, that's one example. I think another thing that I would say is just like you can't overstate culture in terms of building a team. If you do have the ambition to like be a larger company, and you know, we're not a large company. We're about 60, 70 employees, but you know, I think we have the ambition to be much larger and keep growing. I think just bad apples can ruin a company, and I think there's no level of talent can make up for someone who's not like a joy to work with, really, and I think and that you know strikes a cultural chord with whatever you're trying to build. So I think that's another thing we've been attuned to very early on to make sure we get the right sort of people in place and that with the right attitudes.
So I'm going to ask two quick follow-up questions, and then we'll go to the real questions. One is, first off, kudos for recognizing that you can't do it all, because in all honesty, you keep giving credit to your team members, because a lot of people and I've talked to a lot of CEOs, and I actually about 9 months ago did a pretty comprehensive survey of the small businesses, and I asked what their number one thing was that kept them awake at night. Like you just said, number one was cash flow. They didn't always know to state it as cash flow, but there was like, how much money do I actually have in my bank account right now? Is it $35,000 or $235,000? And what am I going to have to hustle? I mean, they're like, this is a real issue. Yeah. Are you sweating? Is that
no? Yeah.
No.
We just did billing. We're okay.
Okay. Yep. Live for another day. Live for another season, I should say, for you guys. But in all honesty, finding good people, because you can't do it all.
I think
isn't that the truth?
I think myself, Daniel, and Katie, our third co-founder, our job primarily now is culture and recruiting.
Okay.
Like that's our primary job, which is that's just if I chopped up my hours in the week, interviewing people, making sure we have the right people, and making sure that the culture and the company around what we're trying to do is right. That's the most important thing. And if you get someone great, you know it pretty quick. You're just like, they need less management, they need less, they just do more. And then you've got this person who all of a sudden is building entire departments, initiatives, and we have a few of those rock stars. I mean, Katie obviously is one of our co-founders. I mean, the box curation at this point, it's it's a machine, and she built that machine, right? And you know, we have David as our head of product and head of growth, and it's a similar thing there. And you know, we already talked about Dana, and these are just like big leaders in the company who, you know, are really like running sort of companies and operations of their own, and it just makes life easier.
I couldn't agree with you more, and we're going to probably come back and follow up on this. I'm going to ask, we have some questions I see in the audience. If we could get a microphone, I know this lady has a question, and then the lady one row back. So
and if I can add, Michelle, you're also invited to text in your questions to the 22333, and I'll look for some to hand off to Michelle as well if not able to get around to you.
Okay,
you can
so
also text.
if you wouldn't mind, please stand up. Stand up, yeah? Well, no, yeah, you're right, not the whole group, yeah. If you could just stand up and introduce yourself and then ask Michael your question.
Hi, Michael. I'm Pam Turkin. I have a brand new business called Rise Baking. I came from a retail baking operation to this. We just launched in April. And I wanted to ask you about sponsorship, because I can see already that we have large manufacturers that want to get in our box and co-brand the ingredients, because we're right in front of first-time bakers always. So my question is that something that you recommend from the beginning to kind of find these partnerships and stay with them? Or is that going to become more of an advertisement to my customer base?
So, and just trying to understand, is the question like, should you focus on selling these sponsorships early on, or?
So we're very much like a HelloFresh only for baking.
Yep.
We put everything in the box and ship it out complete. Every month they get a new recipe, it's experiential, they're baking for real. So now we have like flour manufacturers and sugar manufacturers that want to be in the box every month with their couponing, with their sampling, and co-brand the actual ingredient. Along with mine, we're co-branding. So there's a Rise, because it's color-coded, so there's a Rise sticker and then, you know, a Domino's sugar sticker.
Yeah, so I think to the extent that you can incorporate sponsors and that revenue stream without compromising the end product in any way, and I think it's great. And I think a lot of people have the aspiration to do it, and they'll sort of push it off because it's hard. It's not an easy partnership. It's not an easy sell a lot of times.
I think we're seeing it is for us now, just because we're the only one out there. And they see we have a very active community already of bakers, because baking's emotional and people want to talk about it. But do you get in a box by always sending Domino's sugar every month?
Well, so I think if there's ways to, or if it's something that's going to be there every time, and you know, your core value prop is that you're a discovery product, I think you have to figure out how to tell the story of why that thing is in there every time. Like, we've done some version of repeats, and usually that's not as good of an idea for us, because the whole point of getting the box is to get introduced to new things for us, at least, right? But I think there's probably, if like flour is an ingredient in a lot of your things, and saying like, hey, like, our flour is always sponsored by, you know, I don't know, Flour Co., right? Like, if that then allows you to develop, like, sustain your business, right, and actually, and deliver the customer more value, I think it's a win-win for the customer, for you, for the company. I think that's my perspective on it. I think, you know, I think you have to set the context, you have to explain it, you have to be transparent about it, you know, but
that's why I want to brand it. I think just telling the customer it's that cut. You know, I think it's important to brand it, right?
So I think great question, but I know we have other questions. So I know, you could probably sit the whole hour. We could go, I believe there was another question in the back.
Yeah, and while John's running there, I actually have a great question that came in via text.
Please do, Paul.
With delivering only quarterly, how do you engage your customers between boxes?
It's a great question. And it assumes something, which I just want to point out, which is a decision that we made very early on, which is like, how do you engage? It assumes that you're trying to engage. And I actually think if there's one sort of strategic decision we made early on, it's to engage. And it's not actually the decision that a lot of subscription companies make. Because a lot of times, if you're actually optimizing for your next quarter, next month's retention and churn, a lot of times the right decision is just like, don't let them hear about us. And we actually early on decided, like, we want to be the maximally engaged company, and if we're losing short-term subscribers in doing that, then we're learning what types of engagement work and what doesn't, and over time we'll iterate to something that's just better and bigger and more powerful and more important. So I think I would say, just as an overall philosophy, I think like any like sort of games of attrition or any sort of thing that's like antagonistic to the customer potentially, like maybe they'll forget about us and they don't really like the subscription, but maybe we can get away with another month, or we'll hide the cancel button or anything like that. I think that long run, those are all losers. Yeah. So we decided to engage. We do it between seasons primarily through content. I think we actually have a very robust online magazine. We have social channels that are very vibrant, and they talk about the products in your box and what to do with them, and we drip that content out throughout the season. And increasingly, we're building out different community aspects too, so that almost on its own, there's ways to stay engaged between seasons. And there's other things that we have ideas for and in the mix, but there's a sort of build-up period too in terms of pre-marketing where we do spoilers and things like that, but it's primarily through content and community.
What I also love what you said, Michael, is you are intentional. And again, I think everybody, you don't have to do everything, you don't have to be everything. For some, a go quiet period might make sense, but the key is that you decide what's right for where you're heading as a company, the kind of relationship you want to have, and you said you intentionally decided to engage and what that implication means. So I think I would suggest everybody, do what's intentional for you and your company, not what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I agree, be intentional, but also don't be antagonistic to your customer. If I'm really gonna put a pin on that one, I think you can really get some short-term numbers. You can probably do better at your next board meeting by doing things that are not friendly to your customer, but I do think long run that catches up.
So prepare. We're going to go to this lady here, but a question I wanted to ask you is how do you balance, so just think about it for a few minutes out, balance profitability and growth? Because I think those are things that sometimes can be at odds.
Well, cash is the limit, right?
Yeah, okay. Hold that thought. Okay. Hello, please introduce yourself and ask Michael your question.
Hi, my name is Marlo Staples. I'm the founder of the B-Side Box. And my question touches on balance as well, too. You spoke about being thoughtful about balancing your products with your box, with seasonality, theme for the box, and even some cause products that are connected with a nonprofit affiliation. Could you speak more to this and maybe your process for going about finding the right balance for each box for each quarter?
Yeah, and I was telling Liz, I wish she would just give me the answers every season. And we'll just do what she tells us and we'll be set. But it's literally like we have like a war room. And it's like a game of chess, right? Because it's not like you could just sort of, one, there's like a timeline, right? Like there's just a clock. Like at some point we have to just make decisions. And you sort of don't want to make decisions before what all your options are. And so for us, it's like, first we're creating as many options as possible. And we sort of set a date and say, okay, by this date we have to make decisions. And that's tricky for vendors too, because all the vendors have their own timelines, right? And so you have to well, if we want to get X product, we have to decide by Y date, which means we're going to make all of our decisions by Y date if that product is important enough as sort of like a centerpiece. And so it's really like a game of it's like war strategy stuff where we all come to this room and we have the whiteboard and the budget and but there's boxes we want to check. Like we do have sort of it's developed over time, but sort of not rubrics, but guidelines that we know if we don't have something wellness or fitness related, we're gonna hear from our customers about that. Same for beauty, same with a fashion accessory. We know there's certain boxes we have to check. And then also another dimension that we like to play with is both a combination of really well-known brands that give us credibility and help from a marketing perspective and word-of-mouth perspective and just give authority to the entire box. But then also, it's a discovery box, right? So you want to learn about new cool brands that are under the radar. So for us, it's actually, there's well-known brands, there's undiscovered independent sort of brands, and increasingly also we have like our exclusives too, where we're doing custom work and collaborations where we're launching our own inventions, and that is another angle which makes our customers feel like they're on the inside of something, that only they could get X product by being a member of FabFitFun.
Excellent. Okay, I have a couple more questions, and then we'll also leave another 5 minutes. So at about 5 to 12, we'll also go ahead and ask for it. And we will go to you first, okay? I promise. Make sure the microphone, and then you second. Okay. So you two, but we'll come back to you guys in about 10 minutes. Ethical consumption. You mentioned that in your bio. I know that's something really important to you. Talk to me and talk to the group about what ethical consumption means, please.
Sure. Well, this sort of speaks back to when I was an undergrad. My senior thesis was on some. I became very close to a professor. His name was Michael Hiscox. He's actually one of the leading researchers in this field. He came to it from actually a trade perspective. He was a trade economist. And the problem he was trying to sort of solve was in trade negotiations between countries, the thing that people get really hung up on is labor standards, environmental standards. They're often like the roadblock to creating any sort of bilateral, multilateral trade agreement. And so his sort of idea, and it wasn't like he invented the idea, but his thing that he wanted to sort of put much more on the radar was, well, if customers are willing to basically pay for better labor standards or better environmental standards or whatever sort of social desirable end you wanted to, even if that thing doesn't show up in the end product, right? But knowing that this was made in a certain way, then you didn't really have to rely on trade agreements to raise labor standards in developing countries or get to certain environmental standards and things like that. And so we actually created a whole set of experiments where we invented brands. We created a coffee brand, we created a t-shirt brand, and we put these products on eBay. And we had to create new brands because we didn't want there to be a price comparison that you could just do and say, well, this is what the price of this product is. We wanted to sort of like create a market price. And we then, in the descriptions of those products, we'd alter whether or not we'd communicate something about the labor standards or the environmental standards or whether it was fair trade or whether it was grown in a certain way or things like that. And we'd see, would one product get bid more highly than the other? And a lot of this stuff now at this point is like duh, right? Like, you've had, Warby Parker and things like that, like launch, and there's, I think it's now much more accepted that there is a consumer appetite for these types of things.
Absolutely.
When I was doing this research in 05, 06, it actually wasn't that well accepted, and it was, sort of there was a lot of skepticism about it, and there were some actors who were getting a lot of heat for it, like Nike and et cetera, and then Gap and whatever, and they started having to do it sort of under like activist pressure. But the idea that this would be like a core piece of a business model was still sort of niche. But we saw in the research like pretty clearly like people like eBay, and eBay is actually a very price sensitive customer. It's like a bargain hunter. So if they're willing to pay 10, 20% more for coffee that says this or t-shirt that says that's a pretty strong indication. So we actually ran those experiments in auctions for 3 years, and he's actually published several papers on it too. And we've incorporated some of those ideas. We feature a nonprofit every season. We think in that idea of being a sort of media brand, right, where we're calling attention to important stories. Part of that is the nonprofit, and then beyond just the nonprofit, we also love to share a great sourcing story. So if there is something about how a product was made in this past box, it was 6 female founders. We did a big article. We've done a lot of press around it. I think that Bustle article was actually about 6 female founders who are the inventors of the companies and the products in the box. We've done other things. We did a partnership with a company called Tribalive 2 summers ago, where we actually made the bracelets that went in the box in Honduras with like underprivileged women who actually were the makers of the jewelry. And they had no other employment, and for that summer we actually employed 90 women. So to make these, bracelets, and we sent, someone down there to record and create a film about it and everything. So, I think we have this incredible platform where we can call attention to stories, and now we have actually some scale in what we're sourcing, and it can make a dent if we actually pay attention to those things and care about them, and then, and then if you're just setting aside just the good that you're doing, which makes you feel good, like it's also like, if you're being greedy, it's the right thing to do too. Like, your customer cares. And so, you know.
You know, I think that actually is pretty fun, is 31 bits, right? That was also one prior, is when I was watching some of the videos about the box openings, it's really delightful to not just see you preaching a message, but really see people embracing and making it their own and talking about, oh, this is really cool. You know what, I'm going to do something with that, or I'm going to use this more because of this. So that's power, right? Is being able to disseminate, you know, good philosophies and put them out there, and yet make everybody happy too. You know, so it's not like it's really a cool balancing of the trade-off. Okay, so back to trade-offs. I'm going to ask, because again, I think it is the running of the business part that's important. How have you balanced this drive for growth versus profitability, whether it's working with investors, working with how you manage it yourself? I mean, it is usually a yin and yang bit of a pull.
Yeah, I think we've been like cautiously aggressive.
Cautiously aggressive, okay.
Like, you know, obviously the ultimate speed limit is like, how much cash do you have, and what can you raise also from a fundraising perspective?
Yeah.
I think in e-commerce, actually there's probably another speed limit that's relevant, which is just like, what's a sustainable pace of growth that you can keep up without really compromising, without something breaking. And it's very different if you're just a SaaS product, right? If you're just software, if you're Facebook or something, right? You just sort of like spin up more servers. It's pretty, you know, there are challenges in that too, but when an e-commerce company grows 10x, everything is different. You know, how you fulfill, how you do customer service, how you know, every piece of your infrastructure like has to turn over to 10x. And so like, how quickly can you do that, right? Like, I think that's something we're cognizant of. So we're thinking about like, you know, and actually you look at the biggest e-commerce company in the world, Amazon, and it's not a story of like, you know, they've been growing 2 to 3x every year. That's actually not what, you know, they had hyper growth early on for a couple years, where it was like huge amounts. And then the story of Amazon becoming one of the biggest companies in the world is actually very consistent 20 to 30% growth, compounded year over year, right? And so I think there's a lot of thought that they've given to like, well, where are the opportunities to reinvest our capital that we can keep pushing and pushing and pushing and sort of ski downhill. And I think, you know, we're sort of trying to think too, like, how do we find threads and axes of growth that it's not like a one hit wonder. It's sort of like something that sustainably we can do over and over again for years and years and years. And I think that's what we think will ultimately lead us to be the biggest, most impactful company we can be.
And I think when you said earlier, the next option is only a click away, that kind of keeps you on that freshness of not just doing the same thing, but also looking to spread and grow it and scale it. Okay, I'm going to go to a couple of more of the questions that were in the audience. We'll start right here with this gentleman, and then we'll go to the gentleman that was back there.
Hi, I'm Curtis Kleinman from Swipe Payment Solutions. So far, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
You mentioned keeping in touch with your customers very often in between your quarterly shipments. Do you pump out any sort of newsletter with value-added information or guest speakers and information, or do you have them just come to you?
Both. Yeah, we do have regular emails. So we send at least one weekly content email to our customers, and then we do more on top of that. We'll have different sort of. We started this sort of like a contest sort of engagement thing where whatever it is, each product in the box, not every single one, but like 5 or 6 of them, will say like, this week do X with your product, and show us what you did and post about it. And that's sort of starting to build that community aspect, and people learn from each other then, and so it's a combination of just like us producing content and sort of like call to actions almost for people to do things with their box. I think it's probably the 2 ways that we're doing the most right now.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a question in the back. While we're walking back, I have a fun question for you that's a short one. So celebrity boxes seem to be real hot right now, right? And I'm curious, if you could have a celebrity, somebody that's real or not, send you a box, who might it be?
Oh, for me?
For you, yeah. You don't have to market it. Just who would you like? Oh, that'd be cool to get a box from them.
Elon Musk.
Elon
Yeah.
Musk.
I just want like a box of.
Box. Well, you know it's going to probably come to you
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
Mars and descend.
Maybe
on
he'll
you.
send me a spaceship.
Maybe he will. It's funny because my box would actually be Richard Branson. So that's
Okay.
funny because that's like a parallel race to the moon.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, very fun. Okay, question back there, please.
All right, hey Michael.
Hello.
Great seeing you speak finally. My name is Dovis and I head up business development at a company called HelloFresh. So we worked together a couple of times, so some mutual love.
Yes, we've done some great campaigns.
So that's one of the questions I have. So you mentioned the reason you founded FabFitFun is because you want to change the way people live. Same as us, we want to change the way people eat. And same as probably most of the subscription service companies, we want to change habits. So we send a weekly box with recipes and all the ingredients. I wonder, why do you sell boxes only quarterly? Why can't you, given you have such a cult following and such a success, why would you do a monthly box, a bi-weekly box, a weekly box?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there are there are different rationales for every subscription, and a different cadence might make sense for every different person. And I wouldn't even rule out that some version of what we're doing might happen on a different frequency. But I'll say a few things about what we saw as our starting opportunity and why that led us to the cadence, which is we started we thought there were two main differentiators for what we were when we were entering the market. Was one, we didn't want to just focus on beauty. At the time, there was Birchbox, Ipsy had just launched, and they were pretty, like, if you wanted just a beauty experience, you had some good options.
Great options.
And so we knew we wanted to do all of lifestyle. And if you know you want to do all of lifestyle, then you sort of automatically say, well, it's not going to be just samples. Because like most other categories, the idea of a sample doesn't, like, what's a sample jewelry? Doesn't, right? There's not a thing that's a sample jewelry or a sample scarf. So then now you're in the world of full-size products. And so when you say you want to do across lifestyle and you want to do full-size products, then you have to just sort of look at the economics. Like, what does it cost to do something like that and do it well, right? And not have a compromised experience and still have enough sort of margin to be sustainable. And we thought, we played with different price points, but we thought like $50 was, or $49.99, just under $50, was like the right spot for us. We thought we could create something significantly different than what was out there and significantly better than what was out there. And so once we landed on that price point, then we also knew we didn't want to be just like a sort of a flyby thing where you sort of like try it or it's something I do for a short period of time. We knew like we wanted to have something that you could be a member of forever. Like you would just like be a member of it forever because it's awesome and it's a core part of my life. We didn't want to have like a churn problem on that. And we knew we wanted to build something big and like that could eventually be global and have a mass market audience. So you put all that together and like if you did a $50 box every month, you sort of rule out the idea of being mass market because that's a big ticket, right? Like you might get someone to buy 3 or 4 months, but $600 a year for a sort of novelty discovery product is a lot. Most people can't afford that. And so that's all of those things sort of together landed us on being full-size products across lifestyle on a quarterly cadence. It fit together for us. And again, like there's other iterations of what we're doing that I think make sense on other cadences, but for us, we're happy with how we landed on it.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the question. By the way, my kids have HelloFresh, and they say it's the only 2 real meals they get or 3 real meals they get a week. So thank you. Living in California, that's a benefit. So, okay, I'm sorry we can't take any more questions because it's almost noon. I'm just going to wrap up with one final question from Michael. So, Harvard, Charlie, Stanford, FabFitFun, teaching film. I'm just curious, what's next for you?
I'm so all in, and like this journey is not like anywhere near the end. Like yeah. I think, Danny, myself, Katie, we have a, honestly we're just meeting with this branding firm to help us think through some branding ideas for us, and like we're talking about like, what's our 100-year vision? So it's like, hopefully we're building something that outlasts all of us. I think we have a lot of exciting ideas and things, and it's a pretty deep opportunity, and you never know where life takes you, so hopefully we get to execute on that and build it out. I think we all have other interests, and I wanted to be a basketball player when I was little. I think that's out of the question now, but
Superfoods.
Yeah, this is a huge canvas to paint on, and so I feel very lucky to have the room and creativity that we have, and hopefully we can keep widening the scope of what we're doing and doing it on a larger and larger scale.
Well, Michael, no doubt you will. I do know where our future is going to go. It's going to go to lunch in 2 seconds,
Okay.
but let's just give Michael, I think this has been a real treat to have you
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.